Dreams by eloQuint. I came to when my brain registered the pastor's closing remarks. Off in a dream world, playing out what's going to happen next time I step on the court. I was about to take flight for a dunk after a sweet left-handed in and out dribble, keeping to my favorite side of the court. I gazed the attentive faces of the sanctuary, all the ones I could see, since my family always sat in the front row. I didn't mind, but always wondered how disrespectful my brothers and I are being, teetering in a seat, blatantly nudging each other to stay awake. Usually, I do pretty good, but last night's tangle kept me up, and as the thought ran through my mind, I discreetly smelled my upper lip and fingers, wishing she was still there. Trying not to linger too long, I refocused on the sermon as the pastor confidently paced the elevated homemade wood stage. It was stained in off-black color, almost like a dark gray, and there were matching speaker stands that sat on the ground on either side of the altar. He walked in a half moon to avoid the podium and the glassed-in drum set that sat in the middle of two guitar stands and more speakers that stood a little over 6 feet tall at the back of the stage. The platform was greatly illuminated, whereas the observers sat in a half-lit area, exuberating the greatness of the power behind the words bellowing throughout. Since we are told that it's not the man himself, but God's words flowing through him, and adding a visual makes the words seem more real, kind of like how the media does. I did as I was told and stood to my feet, hearing pops and snaps of my knees and ankles as my joints woke up from their sitting position. The call for prayer and deliverance was up next, as we all closed our eyes and looked at our shoes, trying to sense who was making their way to the altar. I always wondered if that waiting feeling the pastor endures after asking if anybody wants to turn their life over to Christ was like a school teacher asking for a volunteer or a homeless man begging for money, wanting someone to see the light or needing them to. At least it's not whips and chains, I thought, falling into a more pro-black mindset as of late. My mind was open to a couple historical events that redact the information for the systematic destruction of my people. And it almost seems like Christianity, the religion in itself, plays a major role in our life's glass ceiling. Mulling over freshly read articles, I opened my eyes as prayer ended and the congregation started its slow exit. Most patrons stop in the aisle and exchange pleasantries, sliding side to side like a hockey player trying to let others by. We have a couple individuals that leave as quick as they come, but me being as personable as I am, I stick around maintaining relationships, smiling, giving my best self. One thing college taught me is that networking is key, so I try to connect wherever my feet fall. Making my way to the vestibule, which is where everybody eventually migrated to, I hook a left to head to the bathrooms. Weaving in and out the crowd with head nods, I pass a busy sitting area on my right, an announcements kiosk with a few stragglers on my left, and if I went straight, the newcomer's room, but I veered and chose the door on the right that read men. The bathroom had marble sinks and walls that made the area less like a waste room. It was empty, so I flushed in peace. Using a pump bottle, I washed my hands, looking in the mirror, once again flashing back to last night. A sly grin started to reach across my face as the door flung open. You had to pull from the outside, so I quickly about face, getting there in time to have to let him go first. Another head nod, pulling out my phone as I cleared the doorway, checking what I didn't see the times I peeked during service. Using my left thumb, starting from the top of the screen, I scrolled the menu down as my pace slowed, hoping to avert quickly if need be. I didn't make it but a couple steps before I had to stop because of the heavy foot traffic. I could see people's feet out my peripheral. The chatter and music coming from the sanctuary faded out as my attention turned to my phone. Standing still, I scanned the notifications, reading ESPN before swiping off the screen. I looked at Facebook next, checking to see if it was somebody's birthday I cared enough to send a shout out to. I swiped the nuisance notifications off the screen, then responded to a tentative message. Realizing I could browse again, I indulge only for a couple check marks, saving the rest for when I can online date comfortably. I scramble to turn the volume down as I open a couple Snapchats, not even looking up to see who turned my way. Using the swipe keyboard, I began typing out a response with a smile on my face, finishing in time to see a church buddy walking up to me. I pocket the phone, exchanging a handshake, and start to converse on our similarities, which fall under the umbrella of basketball, from ribbing on each other's college teams to staying abreast on recent National Basketball Association trades. After an exiting patron entered our conversation to say his goodbyes, we finished off with inquiring about each other's families, and he wanted to know how my daughter was. Always lining up when she is mentioned, I go off on a half tangent about how much I love her and some of the things we did last time she was in town. After my conclusion of the events on the road trip back to South Carolina, we departed, leaving me alone to scan the foyer, noticing more people left. My last conversation took me to the front doors on the other side of the men's bathroom. With my right shoulder leaning against the frame, facing the way I came from, there was another less active sitting area behind me, with the women's bathrooms against the wall that led to the hallway for children's church. Some kids were with their parents while others roamed the halls in packs waiting for their turn to go home, surprisingly not causing a lot of trouble. I remember back in the day, my brothers and I and other children would get into a lot of while waiting on our parents. We learned every inch of that church, including hiding spots for a secret hide-and-go-seek game. Running around, slowing down when an adult of concern rounded the corner or called out a guilty name from behind. Another head nod. Might as well be the girl from yesterday, head nodding the night away. As I reached back into my front pants pocket, receiving my phone to finish checking notifications. Lighting up the screen, I saw ESPN was back with more news about a football player I knew nothing about. Swiping that and a podcast announcement off the screen, the last pop-up was a GroupMe message labeled 16. GroupMe is a texting application that doesn't decipher between iPhone and Android users. The 16 represents the year I graduated, and in the group is all my Alpha Company classmates. Figuring the message to be comical or telling of a new position that one of them acquired. Being at a military school, only a couple pursued that career. Clicking on the icon and seeing an article link from heraldonline.com, my mind instantly went to someone we knew messed up in some kind of way. Throughout the years, periodically a cadet would fill the headlines, highlighting the school first, then proceeding to tell a story of mishaps, which hit harder because we, as Corps, are supposed to be role models for the community. The prestige of our school calls for a brick target on our backs, lying in wait for one of us to step out of line. Being born an African American, I'm used to those boundaries set by outsiders, so adjusting to that part of the school was a breeze. The headline read, 4 dead, including child and former Rock Hill High athlete in York County crash. Rock Hill? Being at school in South Carolina, the city Rock Hill wasn't uncommon, but an unsettling feeling aroused as I perused my brain for the connection between my classmates and Rock Hill. A name came to mind, but it just couldn't be. I started to slowly read on. The article started off restating that 4 people died, but emphasized that a 5-year-old child passed away as well. It went on to tell the story of the family of 3, identifying them with names and ages and loss of life, was confirmed at the scene. Having to scroll past an ad about nobody knows Rock Hill like us, selling a 99-cent subscription. I almost dropped my phone as the article uncovered the 4th dead. The world stopped around me as I read the name I most feared. My eyes grew as big as knob ears, high beams, and my legs felt as weak as locked knees during parade. My mouth parched as my brain raced, trying to wrap my head around the words I was reading. Continuing on, the article highlighted accomplishments such as prolific wrestler and outstanding football player, commenting on his tenure at Rock Hill High, the Citadel, and his professional career in Canada. I silently added my own accolades of Defensive Player of the Year in Southern Conference, 2-time conference champion, and dedicated father of 2. That hit like a gut blow. With a daughter of my own, I couldn't fathom the feelings going through his family's head. At that moment, I started to yearn for the family I tried so hard to have unsure of when my final day would be and not wanting my child not to know who I am. I clicked out the article and started to read what my classmates were saying about it. They were posting old videos and quotes that made people laugh for 4 years. I chimed in, reminding his knob-eared roommate how the deceased would invite me to the room to smoke Black and Milds, ashing in the windowsill and blowing out the window with the fan by the door to hopefully mask the smell. We all liked the message reminding us of the time after Recreation Day, which is our graduation from plebe year. Our classmate walked into the room of an upperclassman with a taser as an atonement for the last 9 months. Another commented on when they were roommates, he was always forced to leave for a while due to our friend's happy time. My head slowly shook at the thread as my thumb sat paralyzed, realizing I would never see him again or hear his voice. Like in the movies, I started to replay times we had together. I went back to that first summer, the basketball and football freshmen got the chance to connect, and I remember seeing him and thinking, that's a big joker. He has to be a lineman. Not knowing much about football, I just figured the heavy, strong ones belong protecting or attacking the quarterback. I was sadly mistaken when the basketball team was forced to work out with the football players, and he was as mobile as a running back. I was genuinely taken aback. Then we would go lift, and he would put so much weight on the bar it would bend. After seeing that, I didn't want to lift with the football players anymore. I recall Hell Week, which I assume was supposed to mimic red phase of basic training. And I remembered near the end when the football freshman rushed in from training camp and I saw him toe the line awaiting instruction. I was elated, even though I couldn't show it for fear of getting scolded. Not only because it was a familiar face, but another black kid to add to the two already there, including me. I didn't know much about South Carolina before I got there, but what I did know was that there was a Confederate flag that hung in the chapel, and that was enough for me to know my position at that school regardless of class. At the time, we had an attractive African-American TAC, teach, advise, coach, officer, and thoughts of us sliding in slick suggestive hints when applicable, meaning no upperclassmen were around. We often joked about what we do to her, and whoever she was with wasn't doing it right, pledging to do better if ever given the opportunity. That took me to the times we had to stand outside our rooms during taps, a musical tone symbolizing the lowering of the American flag for the night, and we would whisper or play around when the authority wasn't looking. Sometimes, if we could, would try to get the attention of a teammate or friend of a neighboring company. Temporarily breaking free of my trance as second service patrons started into the building, I had to tell someone. Do I go to my parents first, or do I go call close football players to learn more about the passing of a good friend? Indecisive, I stepped towards the door, then back towards the sanctuary, doing that a couple times as my mind was still piecing together what I read. I looked like a glitching 2K player, but chose to make a beeline to my parents, forgetting the dodge and head nod, trying to reach my destination quickly. Swiftly entering the sanctuary, I find my father on the other side of the pew. Exasperated, phone in hand. Dad, my homie just died. That's going to happen a lot as you get older, was his response. I sat staring him in the eye, stunned almost, but registering a great man of little words and wear as many emotions on his face. A man born in the 50s experienced situations that social media is starting to capture. And watching close friends and family fall to crack in the system, death wasn't anything new. I often wonder exactly what he went through, wanting to sit down and peddle stories of the old days, only getting excerpts here and there. Without another word, I take off back to the busier lobby area with more second service members entering, catching early risers out the door. Locating my mother and telling her the news, not expecting much of a response since she was already engaged in a conversation. I try to exit, but confronted with a network marketing business acquaintance. Keeping my best face, we exchange pleasantries as I try not to stare too hard. He had something growing on his face. I wasn't about to ask, just hope his prayers were important enough to be answered on his time. Pivoting, I pushed my way outside, needing air, and to call mutual brothers to either relay the news or confirm. The morning sun burned like it was midday. If there was a breeze, I didn't feel it. The sun seemed to be draining as a wave of emotion overtook me, and all my appendages became heavy as if there was an overdose of lactic acid running through my body. My breathing was erratic as I tried to place one foot in front of the other, thinking about the last time we spoke. Did I tell him I loved him? I'm sure he knew, but who am I to say as I impetuously looked at the heavens anticipating an answer, hoping he at least made it up there. Not exactly sure of the fulfillment to get my name written in that book, but maybe he will at least get a star. I tried recollecting his voice and that signature greeting he used to always give me, which included enthusiasm and a bear hug. And even if I wasn't having a good day, his love was spread, causing you to smile regardless. His 2 daughters flooded my mind again as my own child crawled across my memory as my vision blurred, blinking away. I thought about our conversations on the topic, complaining and giving personal experience, advice hoping it'll help with the pain caused by the mothers. For the most part, it was him giving me advice on the little information I gave him, telling me to stay strong because success is around the corner. We work too hard for it not to be. Phone still in hand, I try to look at the screen, always the one that set the brightness at the lowest. I squint and put my other hand on top to shield the sun. Pausing, figuring where I should start, I shoot a couple texts to my former roommates and a couple of my teammates who would have known the champion and shared sympathy. Feeling the closest out of my basketball teammates, I reached out to a football player that transferred to a Division II school in New York. He was one of many friends that matriculated with me, but never got the chance to proudly walk across the stage. Finding his contact name, I swiped right, automatically dialing his number without having to press the call button. It didn't ring twice before I heard his dry voice answer the phone. Yo, you here? I had to ask, even though I knew by the way he answered. Yeah, it's crazy, man. I just talked to him not too long ago. We both talked as if we didn't want to discuss the subject, but he began by informing me that our late brother was thinking about going back to Canada to continue his professional football career. I chimed in by relaying that I just missed him about a month or 2 ago when he was in Durham, North Carolina for a football tryout. My little brother was there. I wish now that I knew he was coming, I would have went with my brother to watch, but why didn't I already do that? Rattling my brain trying to figure out where I was that day. The voice on the phone assured me that there wasn't any foul play involved, and that the family swerved and collided head-on, killing everybody. I inquired of his daughters and comment on how the loss of life will affect them as they grow up. Hopefully a father figure that can step in and do a similar job or better. Making a verbal oath to keep tabs with his kids, not exactly knowing how, but that's what was on our hearts. After stating all he was told, memories is all we had left, so we surfed the waves of emotion or lack thereof, stifling anything that didn't convey manhood. We laughed at the time downtown when 2 white boys tried to pick a fight with a couple of the football players, and how our homie eventually ended up curb stopping one. Every time I hear the story, I wanted to be there throwing bowls with my classmates, remembering how we all bucked the system, wearing soft shoe, tennis shoes, with our duty uniform for months without having a note to approve it. Our feet really did hurt though. Working out early mornings, then wearing dress shoes the rest of the day, then changing back again for practice that afternoon. We also had to walk the long way around campus. See as to it, only seniors and second semester juniors could walk across the big field that centered campus. It was called the parade deck, simply because that's where parade was held. We mulled over on how we missed out on a lot of those due to our schedules. In season, our respective sports were priority, but before and after we were as confined as the rest of the Corps. Trying to be positive, we share our gruntled excitement over seeing each other again. It had been too many months. Hanging up, I put the phone in my back left pocket and my hands in the front too as I inhaled, taking in the scenery. Wishing my homie could feel the brightness of the sun again, the ground beneath our feet, the turf of the field, or the warmth of his children's arms. I truly hoped he would get a chance to walk amongst the living, visiting people he cared about. Maybe I will be on that list. As I face the church, reflecting on how that theory doesn't flow with my preached beliefs. I found myself next to the flagpole that stood tall in front of the church. The flag was lame this morning. My right shoulder leaned up against the pole, and staring straight ahead, I could see brick. And if I looked left, there were the doors I came from, and the parking lot extended in that direction. I stood on a slight incline that showed more rocks and clay than grass, always trying to avoid stepping this way during rain showers. Behind me were the other stores that filled the complex, a Subway, an Indian-owned store with only customers of a similar culture. I'm sure others are welcome, but one would have to know what they were looking for, I would assume. As the rest of second service piled in, they spoke and waved at a somewhat carcass of a man. Only a silhouette, as my mind was forced to process this unfamiliar feeling of death. In spite of the mother of my child making me feel like that's the best way, with her trying to build a precipice between my daughter and my side of the family. Even through all the hurt, and at times the sun rose but wasn't shining, the thought of a family soothed me. Knowing that my classmate would never be able to fulfill those shoes, and already seeing the dream fade with mine, I felt it pertinent that I fall in line with the ideal family regardless of what it takes. If not for him, then at least my daughter. But it all seems so far away, like I will be stuck in this spot, this situation, and this hurt forever. I'd do whatever for my daughter though, even if it means living unhappy for the rest of my life. I just need to be with her every day, ask her about her day, and tell her the real truths of this world. I have a child that can mold to be pro-black, resilient, proud, goal-driven, to learn to have a passion and make the most of it. That same fire will carry over to the public or private sector, encouraging entrepreneurship and focus on the development of our community. I just have to have her. As I start to plot how I'm going to fake my smile, as I've done the last few years, walking back into pain I've been unsuccessfully running from. That got me silently ranting about this attraction I detest. The feeling of no matter what they do, I'll always give them another chance. The horrible feeling of waking up and going to sleep thinking about that person, stuck and blind to what's in front of my eyes, lost in some four-letter word that apparently entails unhappiness and pain. I mean, even God says falling in love and following his footsteps will bring child before triumph. Why is that? Why is it that even when I gave my heart, and if I give God my soul, why must I still endure pain? Trying to shake off the fog, I turn right, mindlessly walk into my car in the parking lot, opposite the direction I came, kicking the earth, barely picking up my feet. Still forcing one foot in front of the other, I make a couple more calls to two more football players. A 4-year starter and 2-time champion cornerback, and a redshirt 2-time champion safety, both carrying such a presence on the field, making offenses cower. I asked them what all they knew, hoping to ascertain more than what I already learned. To no avail, and not wanting to push farther, I hang up by the time I reach my car. Missing the keyhole, my hand shook, throwing off my coordination. I tried to steady myself, but my mind kept racing. It was almost as if my thoughts were interfering with the nervous system. I stand tall, close my eyes, and slowly inhale, filling my lungs with steady air, holding it only to exhale at the same pace. I repeated this process one more time, hoping to calm the motor in my head. Using this technique after a workout, this should work. I was able to slide the key in and open the door, feeling the store heat spill out. Closing the door, I partake in my post-church ritual, if you will, grabbing a cigar pack with my left hand out the side compartment that folded out towards me. I rip the ceiling open and slide a cigar out, resealing the pack, and with my two thumbs, start to split the cigar down the middle, almost a straight line every time. With an immeasurable amount of practice, I take pleasure in the process, using my right hand to blindly find the Powerade bottle hiding underneath the passenger seat. Twisting the top off, the smell of earthly medication filled my nose and added to the residual smoke that seemingly can't escape. Smoking and driving has never been ideal, but considering the fact it's probably the safest with my current living situation, at least that's what I tell myself. As I overturn the bottle, letting my grinder in a small container I got from a dispensary in Las Vegas fall into my lap. Splitting the cigar was symbolic for the wound that was just open. Then I unscrewed my Las Vegas container, extracting enough to refill the cigar. Opening the grinder, I stuffed the medication and smashed the top back on, creating tiny granulates that represented the pain, fears, and inadequacy of not just death, but all that weighs on my mind. After a couple aggressive twists, I open the middle section that catches what falls through the greater part and pour it into the cigar, spraying it evenly. I start the process of tucking these feelings away and rolling them to the back of my mind, using the lighter to crisp over all that is hidden, hardening the outside to burn what's inside from memory, at least for a couple hours. I start the car, noticing I fail to check my surroundings. Doing that, I pull off and head to the stop sign that all of us use to exit the premises. Making a right, I wait until I hit the highway before sparking, right into a portable speaker that I could barely hear, keeping the windows cracked to let the smoke out. By the time I drive a mile or so, death escaped my mind and I was filled with lyrics to the song I was listening to. A coping mechanism that only lasts a few hours, but those pain-free hours are critical to my sanity, fearing if I didn't, I may never come back. I smoked about 3/4 before making it home, changing it into my gym gear for the routine Sunday training sessions. Grabbing a water bottle and fruit, I head out the door to fake the intensity I pride myself on bringing to each lesson. Correcting the most minute detail in order to become a better player overall, all while using basketball as a foundation for developing men. Impacting a child's life is the reason behind my training and newly found love for coaching. I used to think I wouldn't enjoy it as much as I do. Those few hours in the gym and that next week seemed to be a blur. Working retail every day to keep my mind occupied, the 16 group chat popped back on my screen a couple days later, this time with the funeral address and time. It was at the deceased old high school in Rock Hill, a 2-hour drive for me, not having to think twice whether I'm going or not. Still not sure how I'm going to react once I get to the funeral. Will I be able to hide my emotions as well as I do at work? Will my emotions move me to tears? Surely not. Mainly in every essence, so I do as always and push those feelings to the back of my mind. The sentiment of wanting a family occupied my thoughts, using this upcoming week to talk back with the mother of my child, expressing how much I needed to have this family, never knowing when my last day would be. I needed to be in my daughter's life. It wasn't enough to just video chat and see her once a month. Hopefully, I wanted to be hands-on like those first couple of months she was born. Maybe if things didn't go so badly during that time, we would still be together. A happy family that I can be proud of and take care of. I employed how I would even come pick them up an extra 2 hours to my drive just to have them by my side during this trying time. Always willing to go the extra mile even before we had a kid, but like always, it was never reciprocated. Of course it wasn't. I don't know why I'm always running back to her, especially when I'm in need of comfort. A lady who didn't care to support or make me happy, and me trying to make something work out of nothing. I'm left with the same gaping feeling I had when I was more or less forced out of South Carolina and out of my daughter's everyday life. I often wonder what makes me want her so bad. If anybody, even her, asks what I like about her, I get tongue-tied, but all I know, she's who I'm fiending for each night. What a horrible feeling of being attached to someone I know I shouldn't be with. An almost uncontrollable fascination. If this is what love is, I never wanted to experience it again. It couldn't be love though, right? I was told love was this blissful marathon, always kind of seemed like a fairy tale to me. I know there are supposed to be ups and downs, but what happens when only one of us is getting up? And it wasn't me or my head. I do for you and you do for me. I think that's love, and if you're not willing to do that, then you can't possibly love that person. Simple. Maybe that's my problem. Trying to look in the mirror to reflect on my own faults. But if I'm constantly doing for you and can't get the same in return, I don't see the problem in seeking it somewhere else. I'm confused. But I've always been told I was devoid of emotion. Another day of pushing this hurt to the back of my mind. My alarm woke me up Saturday morning, still feeling a little cloudy after another night of running from myself. I wish now that I didn't light as much, considering I don't have a lot left and need the extra money for gas and food on the road trip. I methodically got ready, almost hopping back in bed, not wanting to face this pain. This will be the second funeral I've ever attended. The first was one of my best friend's mom that passed, which hurt, but couldn't compare to the companionship that was developed over the past 4 years. We had no choice, cornered in small alcoves and hearing nuts to butts, a common stigma throughout the school. I didn't have any female classmates, so I wasn't sure how that went for them, but I can't imagine it being too different. Getting in the shower, I let the hot water beat on my head for about 15 minutes without moving. Inviting the warmth of the water over this chilling feeling, I slap on lotion, trying to smooth out the dryness of the day. Ironing to press out the wrinkles of fears coursing through my body. In a lost headspace, moving from activity to activity without much thought, like a soulless corpse. Walking to the kitchen, I prepare a simple egg, cheese, and turkey bacon breakfast sandwich, losing the sense of creativity this morning. I toasted the bread and fried the eggs and bacon, staring blankly into the pan. The sound of food cooking brought me back as I put the sandwich together. After I finished eating, I grabbed everything I needed for the road trip, double-checked, then headed for the door. I called out from the foyer, letting everybody home know that I was leaving. Moments after, I heard footsteps and was hugged and prayed for. I started to walk out the door and my mom called out to me, "Are you going to be okay?" Seemed odd, but that was the first time any one of them asked if I was okay. Maybe it's because I never stopped smiling, or the emotion I feel but can't express. Or it's the fact that they know I handle commiseration internally. Like always, I give my best smile and tell her that I was going to be alright and turn and walk to my car. Unlocking the door of my Toyota, I plop into the driver's seat, throwing my book bag and overnight bag to the passenger side, hearing the thud as they collided with the door. The only good thing about the trip is that I got a new iPad, passed down from my brother, and it held all the new up-to-date music that'll get me through this ride. Surfing through albums, I reached back to pull out my Powerade bottle, preparing myself for the road trip. Before I could find an appropriate album, I twist the bottle open, pulling out a nug that was an insult to the how I wanted to feel. Needed to feel. Unrolling the roach from last night and combining to what I had left, I was only able to roll less than half a blunt. Probably the next time I will be able to pick up, I choose a J. Cole album. Hopefully my favorite rapper will be able to cheer me up. Putting the car in gear and lighting the clip, I start for my uncharted destination. Not just Rock Hill, but the sentiment that will linger in the air once I'm there. I shuddered as the clip turned back into a roach, expiring before my thoughts could slip away. Like running from a demon that carries the pain that keeps my mind turning. I know it's not the best coping mechanism, but it's surely not the worst. At least I still have control over myself. I wish I had more control over my thoughts, but the lack of levitation caused the battlefield in my mind. The potential ascendancy of evil over good. I strongly believe the favor passed down from my father's spiritual awareness and dedication is what keeps me from tipping over the edge. Merging onto the interstate, my mind switched lanes like the car as I flicked the blinker down, looking in my side mirror. The steering wheel wavered as I corrected the car and wiped at my eyes, the memory standing as tall as the trees, casting a dark shadow over the Toyota. The temperature dropped to that of a morgue. My heart palpitating, remembering sitting in his house in West Ashley, playing Call of Duty, talking trash. Days like those seemed never ending, but those same days, I thought, would bring serenity in our latter years of life. There isn't anybody who could have guessed there would be a day that we wake up to a fallen companion and a brotherhood that was naturally created through survival. At least that's what it seemed like. Trying our best to stand tall, clinging to each other's words of encouragement and spiteful curses for entertainment because laughing it off was a healthy way to get through it. I used my left hand to bring the blinker up, looking into the blind side mirror and switching into the slow lane, pulling out a black and mild, craving an altered mindset. Any kind of stimulating buzz. But even before I lit it, I knew the nicotine wouldn't suffice. Setting in cruise control, I pulled my first drag, inhaling and holding in the smoke, letting it dissipate into the bloodstream that rushed to my head. Laying it out, I repeat the process, brushing off the damage my lungs were receiving. My mental telling me that my current situation is more important than worrying about lifelong effects. As the smoke raced out the window, with help of the air conditioning, I watched as cars of various models zoomed by, even a couple 18-wheelers. In my life, at this point in time, that's how I felt. Everybody passing me by while I'm seemingly stuck on cruise control. Watching people switch lanes and advancing while I'm stuck, trudging by, smoking away the pain of inadequacy. Exhausting each opportunity and avenue, trying to get a sniff of a higher income, helping me better support my daughter. Maybe then I'll be able to have the family that I always wanted. It seemed as if I was driving on autopilot, not really paying attention to the road, but still driving properly. It's almost the same feeling as reading out loud and thinking at the same time. Amazing how the brain works. The rest of the ride was a roller coaster of emotions, ping-ponging from one thought to the next. Some a long volley and the others an ace to the heart. Some were uphill, but most were a decline. The pressure forcing my body rigid, stuck to the headrest. I always loved roller coasters, just not the ones that run between my ears. Throughout the week, my classmates' group me message thread was busier than usual, with planning a restaurant to meet and grab breakfast as well as gathering attendance. Most classmates could make it. We even had a classmate go AWOL from his post in Florida, justifiable for the man in the casket. We all agreed on a Cracker Barrel and exit away from the high school. I knew because I wasn't listening and the GPS rerouted me. I take in my surroundings as I drive the new terrain, wondering how many times my friend drove these same streets, who he was with, what was going on in life. At the time, even what decisions were made that could have prevented our paths from ever crossing. Pulling in the parking lot, finding a suitable spot to back in, I elegantly turned the wheel to fit perfectly in between the lines. Checking the rearview mirror, I couldn't see my eyes due to shades, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to. Apparently, my first look, judging by the placement of my tie. Wanted to realign my outfit, subconsciously worrying about gigs. The succulent air brought resurfacing thoughts of inspections and uniforms. Gigs with points taken off for abnormalities in a cadet's uniform or room, and if received enough, their leave, ability to escape the gates, will be stripped away. I opened the door, catching a whiff of the tobacco smell that still lingered, stepping out with my left leg first, followed by the right, then the rest of my body accompanied by a grunt. As I straightened up, my joints started communicating, a snap followed by a pop until they finished waking each other up. I started to run my hands down my chest and legs, dusting off crumbs and picking that never-ending lint, flicking it to the wind. I stopped to watch the white spiders float effortlessly, careless in direction or next destination, non-existent to the nuances of life. Being inanimate was a lot more appealing than dealing with the situation of today. Unfortunately, I didn't have a choice. Looking in my reflection, I continued checking my wardrobe, wanting to carry over what I learned from school to the real world, at least for today. Maybe to pay tribute to a fallen comrade, or maybe because I didn't want to let my classmates down, since they were a big reason I got through the military aspect of the school. Whether it was helping shining brass or shoes, inspection, or keeping the uniform presentable, they were always willing to help. A lot of them always supported the basketball team, coming out to most home games, cheering and representing the company with a horizontal A on the collar, the tip pointing towards the neck. Striding to the front door, I recognize classmates' cars and see another pulling up as I enter the restaurant. Showered with hugs and handshakes, it felt good to be reunited. This was our first encounter since graduation. We just wish the circumstances were different. Like the wedding we were all attending for our highest ranking classmate, by senior year he became 1st Battalion Commander, in which he governed our company and the 3 surrounding. In any institution there will be politics. We were glad the commander was one of ours. The wait was expected to be 30 minutes, which allowed the rest to trickle in, giving everyone a chance to catch up before we sat. It was as if we were all determined not to talk about the task at hand, as conversations flowed from work to family to the women we were dating. We waited in the lobby and scanned the array of options Cracker Barrel had to offer, pointing out items to throw jabs at one another. Felt like the old days. A group of nicely dressed gentlemen brandishing a band of gold in Rock Hill was enough to draw attention as we headed for our table. It was almost as if forks lay lame and mouths stopped moving as eyes focused on our presence. And as soon as we sat, a couple questions were asked in our direction by another table. We got settled and quickly ordered since the funeral was to start in the next hour. I received a call from the football transfer telling me that a lot of guys were meeting at the deceased mother's house. By the time my food got here and I ate, I would be too late. So I told him I would catch him at the high school. The food came swiftly. I ordered an egg and bacon sandwich that came runny when I specifically asked him not to. I didn't make a fuss since we were already limited on time. Our friend, I coined preacher, from an opposing company, walked in, compelling shouts of greetings from all of us at the table. We ate and chatted, then were soon on our way to the high school that embraced our classmate just as much as the men driving single file. Reminiscing on the gutters, I smiled, trying to recall some memories to rectify what was already dead, unable to revisit with the fallen soldier. One time I was a couple cadets behind him jogging, chins tucked, eyes open, wide arms glued in a 90-degree angle, single file in the barracks, headed for the stairs. And I see an upperclassman running up only to get flattened by the lineman's shoulder, stiff in the lab, hoping to avoid push-ups. Hopefully, I thought, the transgressions that we shared together won't fade like the seemingly astute cadets that failed at bucking the system. As we turned into the parking lot, the facade of an infallible stout dwindled as if I hit a force field, stripping away my determination to make it through the day. A disquiet emotion filled my soul, wanting to run away like I do so often when it pertains to situations requiring me to face the problem at hand. Whether women or deaf, I use vices such as weed, writing, reading, and working for stimulating my mind, keeping unhinged thoughts at bay. Unwarranted, to say the least. Coping mechanisms paired with invading notions of despair. Losing hope of success and family, I back into my parking spot, swinging the door open, forcing myself to take the initial step, feeling heavier after tapping into the mental baggage. We all parked in the same vicinity and waited for each other before walking in as a unit. A habit. The autumn South Carolina sun blazed in the early afternoon, creating blinding glares on the cars that I walked past. Thankful I remembered to bring my sunglasses and wear contacts. My gait wavered as much as my persona as the front doors finally came into view. Well, as much as I could see, due to the fact that the front entrance was crowded as mourners piled in to pay their last respects. I had to remind myself that I was headed to a funeral and not a sporting event. This scene is how I imagine the deceased's playing days. People from various cities walking over each other to see the superstar perform. The solemn expression of pain brought me back to reality as we approached the back of the line. Seeing a couple familiar football faces, we acknowledged, embraced, and began talking in hushed tones, as if we were trying not to wake the dead, or a church service. We shared with each other how we couldn't believe this was the inducement for our first grand gathering post-graduation. Unfathomable. Like the sun that was beating on our heads, feeling my pores open under an all-black outfit of a dress shirt, dress pants, tie, and crocodile-designed dress shoes. Regretting wearing all black, I tried to inch my way closer to the doors, which was under an overhang that provided a sliver of shade. Reaching out to help keep the door open as we all tried to squeeze in, feeling the rush of the cool air as we approached the entrance. Immediately, I found myself in the gym foyer, an open space with a tile floor that usually exhibits sports accolades. Unfortunately, today was different. Although the trophies and plaques stood tall in the vestibule, they were overshadowed by the acknowledgments of the former high school standout. To the right were the trophy cases as well as bathrooms on either side of the closed concession stands. In front of that were 3 long rectangle tables that contained pictures and various memorabilia from middle school to the most recent. Seeing older football players that helped set the tone for the championships won and the mindset that followed, I stepped by the line and shake hands, expressing both gratitude and sorrow. An unequivocal feeling of remorse swept over my body as the reunion brought about an array of emotions weakening my extremities. The struggle of wanting to smile in the presence of faces that excavate positive memories, but knowing we wouldn't have them without the connections made by our man in eternal slumber. Shaking hands with a half dozen class of 15 champions, I walked to the gymnasium, stopping at a waist-up portrait, weirdly relishing the dress gray uniform, the gold buttons sparkling like his well-known smile. Continuing on through the gym doors, I was forced to an abrupt stop, trying not to step on the heels of the person in front of me. There was a tarp that covered the court and had chairs set up resembling a church service or graduation day. The line I was in started at the door and wrapped around all the chairs leading to the casket at the front pew as if communion commenced. I was in awe of how many people were in attendance. The bleachers and chairs on the floor were filling fast, and there were plenty others behind me. As I inched forward under the far basket, I had to wonder if my funeral will have as great a showing. Will I touch enough lives that my passing will be the catalyst for congregating the past and the future? Various time periods assembling to paint the picture of an honorable man and a father on a 2-hour canvas. I used to think I wouldn't have to worry about these kinds of thoughts. I used to think I had all the time in the world. But the casket I was approaching proved that life isn't guaranteed. The closer I got, the clearer the view of the silhouette that was once lively in every essence. I felt as if I was supposed to be waking him up for information. Maybe to help him get ready for senior picture day, which was less than a year ago, or make plans for the weekend coming up. Even just a simple conversation, a whisper, a word, anything to prove that this is all a dream, and he will jump up to scare everyone and brighten the room as he always did. Unfortunately, it was real, and any doubt was dismissed as it was my turn to approach the casket. Standing over the body, I felt emotionless and empty. He looked recognizable, but altered. He had lost some pigment and his skin looked shiny and fake, and he looked bloated as if they added air to liven him up. Instead, to me, it made him look sickly, ghostly, for a lack of a better word.